everybody. This is Mr. Rob, and welcome back to another episode of the Washington Commanders franchise here on Madden NFL 24, where year number 3 is officially over. So today we will recap the season that was for us since we did not make the postseason, take a look at some of the stats around the league, and sim the playoffs and see who will be playing in the next Super Bowl, as well as we'll look at some of the coach firings and stuff like that. So kind of recap what was 2025 and get us on the way for another offseason. Hope you guys are excited for this one as we get ready for year 4. If you are, make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content, as the next episode after this will actually be the Super Bowl, which we, like we've done in years 1 and 2, will live stream, which we'll be looking at Saturday, March the 23rd at 1 p.m. So just kind of keep that on your radar. So today we'll find out who will be in that game. But we'll start off first by just looking at the schedule. We finished 6-11, and it was kind of it was a disappointing year for us because we had playoff aspirations coming in, but things unraveled quickly. You can see we lost our first 4 games, 5 of our first 6. We lost at home to the Cowboys, then got slaughtered at Kansas City, lost a close one against the Cowboys. We played them twice in the first 3 games, and then lost to the Bears. All those ugly. We gave up over 30 points in all of those games, only scored above 20 once. Then in week 5, we won against the Packers 41-25. Ended up being a blowout late because we had 2 special team touchdowns. And then we lost at Los Angeles 33-16 before hitting our bye week, which is very much needed. We were sitting at 1-5, and we came out of the bye week in a good spot. We beat the Jets 31-26, and then lost our next 3. We lost to the Buccaneers 34-16, lost to the Giants 33-10, and then lost to the Eagles 41-23. And at this point, every time we'd given up over 30 points, we lost. And if we didn't give up 30 points, we won. The problem was our defense was playing absolutely atrocious through the first 10 games of the season. We sat 2-8. The defense was just out of control. But something happened after this game, because then we beat the Raiders 30-3. Yes, the Raiders didn't have the best quarterback. It was Sam Howell, who was a former Commander. But we only gave up 3 points, which is pretty incredible. And the next week, we beat the Seahawks 45-21, where Penix Jr. threw for 6 passing touchdowns in that game. And the next game, he had a breakout opportunity against the Giants. He unfortunately got hurt, but we did win 32-29. So we put together a little 3-game win streak here, sitting at 5-8. But then after the injury to Penix Jr., everything fell apart again. Jacoby Brissett took over at the helm, and the offense was just not the same. We lost to the Broncos 27-24 in the first game of the season that we gave up less than 30 and lost. Then we gave up 27 again to the Vikings, but only scored 13. The offense was just not the same. And then the worst game of the season, 47-6 against the Lions. Not only was the offense atrocious, the defense was non-existent. This just looked like the kind of game that gets you fired if you're a head coach, honestly. And then we did somehow rebound and won the final game of the season against the Eagles, 19-10. Yes, we gave up only 10 points to Philly, and were able to emerge victorious, capping off our year with 6-11. Definitely a lost year, but you can't harp on that kind of stuff. As far as the standings, here's what happened around the league. The Bengals are the best team, and the number 1 pick will go to the Cleveland Browns, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. They still do owe a lot of money to Deshaun Watson, but with Archie Manning, the best prospect in the league, you got to wonder if that's the way they go. We will have the 6th pick in the draft. We do have our first-round pick this year, and we will have a top 10 selection, so we'll have to see what we do with that spot. As far as the bad teams, we'll go back into the standings real quick. Getting a little ahead of myself, but we'll start off in the AFC side of things. In the AFC North, it was the Bengals, who got the number 1 seed. They were the best team in football. They finished 14-3. The Steelers also made the playoffs at 11-6. The Ravens missed out. Yes, Baltimore will not be in the postseason, as Call of Duty is actually ready to play. They finished 9-8, and then the aforementioned Browns, the worst team in the league. The AFC South, the Colts, they finished 14-3. What a year that they had. Nobody expected them to be where they're at. They are the 2 seed. Anthony Richardson proving that he deserves to be the starter out there in Indianapolis, considering everything going on with them and the fact they drafted Mitchell Stanley last year in the first round. Jaguars finished 8-9. That was a disappointing season for them. The Texans 7-10, and the Titans were 5-12. In the East, the Bills pulled it out 13-4 after rattling off 6 straight wins to end the season. The Patriots also made the playoffs at 11-6. The Jets, after being the worst team in the league last year, finished 8-9. Drue had a very good rookie campaign. And then arguably the biggest disappointment of the year, the Dolphins finished 4-19. They have the second pick in the draft. And then out in the West, the Chargers finished 13-4. They made the division win. The Chiefs had to run 3 straight to squeak into the playoffs as the 7 seed, which is not what you want to see if you're a 2 seed though. The Raiders finished 7-10 and the Broncos 6-11. In the NFC side of things, in the North, the Vikings finished 12-5, had a very good year out of sophomore quarterback Bo Nix. The Lions finished 7-10, followed the Bears at 6-11, got off to a good start, but the wheels quickly fell off out there in Chicago, and the Packers were 4-13. In the South, the Buccaneers won the division 11-6. They were threatening for the number 1 seed for a while. The Falcons missed out on the playoffs. The Desmond Ridder injury just too much for them to overcome. They finished 9-8. The Saints 7-10, and the Panthers 5-12. Our division is again one of the most loaded in football. We have the Eagles winning the division at 10-7, and then the 2 wildcard teams coming for our division, the 9-8 Cowboys and the 9-8 Giants, and then we were 6-11. And then out in the West, the Niners squeak out the division with 10-7. The Rams falter late. They were winning the division all year until the final week of the season. And then the Seahawks 7-10 and the Cardinals 7-10 to round out the standings. Now, obviously, there were a lot of bad teams this year, so which means some coaches are going to get fired, and it was a busy Black Monday in the NFL. So we'll look at all of the firings head coach wise. The Panthers fire, that's Steve Wilks. He's gone after 2 campaigns. The Titans fired Jim Schwartz after just 1 year out there in Tennessee, and one and dones were kind of the theme this year. Now, if you notice, we did not fire Eric Bieniemy. Yes, 6-11 was not a good finish, but we're going to give him 1 more year. Instead, we just fired the defensive coordinator. I think that was pretty appropriate. The Ravens fired their OC. The Packers clean house. Matt LaFleur is officially gone out there in Green Bay. You'd have to think he would be sought after. And then the Dolphins clean house as well after a disappointing campaign. Mike McDaniel is gone. Another guy who could be on the radar for a lot of teams. Vrabel was an offensive coordinator from Miami last year. He's officially gone as well. That's interesting. The Cardinals, they fired Jonathan Gannon, so another head coaching spot out there. And then Mike Tomlin, after just 2 years, is fired in Cleveland. I guess when you're the worst team in a football, that's kind of, a thing that's going to happen. And then the Bears, after losing 6 straight, they clean house. That is supposed to be Matt Nagy. Yes, the short-lived Matt Nagy reunion out there in Chicago is over. So 7 teams looking for a new head coach: the Chicago Bears, the Cleveland Browns, the Arizona Cardinals, the Miami Dolphins, Green Bay Packers, Tennessee Titans, and Carolina Panthers all have head coaching spots. But we'll come to the hirings at the end of the episode. I'll show you who each team ended up hiring, but we'll go into our player stats now, see how the team did. Obviously, we were not a good team overall. The yardages, I will say again, is skewed. Some reason the sim games of the CPU just are well undershot in my opinion. So a lot of our stats are kind of inflated, especially those defensive numbers. We weren't a good defensive team anyway, but I don't think we were, the 10th best offense either. So we'll go to player stats first. Here's our passing stats. Michael Penix Jr., his rookie campaign at 1,800 yards, 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and was playing really, really well towards the second half of the season before he dislocated his knee and was out for the season. Now, we have a top 10 pick, so, the question remains, is he our long-term quarterback? And this is his first full year as a starter, and I think it's a little too early to write off Michael Penix Jr. I think he deserves another chance. But, if there is a top quarterback that falls to our pick, do you pass on him? I don't know. So, I would like to think the Penix Jr. era is still in Washington, but you never know. Jacoby Brissett played a lot of the year as well as the backup, 1,900 yards, 7 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He missed a lot of throws, and, his second stint hasn't been that great here in Washington. I don't think he'll be around next year as the backup quarterback. I think his days in Washington are kind of done, in my opinion. So he filled his spot, but it did stink that we had to roll with Jacoby and not Michael Penix Jr. In the rushing category, this is where our team is the strength. We try to get back to that run-first play style. Singletary led the way with 1,000 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. A step back for him as though, he was a superstar last year. He did miss some time this year, but, he kind of split carries a lot. So you can see him and Gibson were almost 50-50, maybe like 60-40 in my opinion. And Gibson had a good year as well, 892 yards, 4 touchdowns for him. I think Gibson's a very good back. He was a superstar back at one time before he got hurt, and Singletary low-key just kind of stole a superstar dev. But we have a good backfield duo in Singletary and Gibson. I know Singletary is a free agent though, so that's one guy we need to look at, while Gibson is signed on for next year, and he's got a pretty decent cap hit. So I don't know if I'll have enough money to bring back Singletary. One of the things about being a bad team, these guys aren't going to want to come back here cheap. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that halfback room. Kareem Hunt was just a one-year preseason signing who did okay. He had 3 touchdowns. It's more of that power back. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back if he wanted something on the cheap side as well. Phoenix had some rushes, never found the end zone though, but Brissett found it twice on the ground. In the receiving category, this is where it's just the Terry McLaurin show. He's the only one with over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, which is why we gave him the big 6-year extension, because I just can't imagine this offense without Terry McLaurin. He's the top 5 wide receiver in the league. He bails us out on so many occasions. In games where he's hurt or he doesn't play, our offense is almost non-existent. So he is the heart and soul of especially our passing game, and I like to keep it that way. But after him, we're still trying to find another help. This year, the second highest receiving yards was Allen Robinson, who had 615 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was coming off a year in Indianapolis where he had 13 touchdowns, and I think he played the slot role relatively well. I wouldn't be opposed to him coming back to that position next year, but he is going to be 33 years old, and he's going to regress. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there with A-Rob. Maybe he's back, maybe he's not. Maybe he's back and he gets some competition. Who knows? The biggest question mark at wide receiver, though, is Jahan Dotson. He only had 51 catches for 514 yards, never found the end zone. He's just never really fully put it together. We declined his player option for next year, so he is a free agent after this year, and he's still a guy I'm on the fence with and bringing back. He's got a lot of good traits, good speed, good route running. His catching is in a pretty solid spot, but he's just never put it together. I'm not sure if it's just him or if it's because the offense we run doesn't cater to his ability as much, or is the fact that he's also a deep threat just like McLaurin, and if they're both going to go deep, I'd rather McLaurin do that. So I don't know. He's just never really found a hole in this offense. We'll have to see what happens with his future in Washington. Gibson had 345 yards in the air. We already kind of touched on him. He never found the end zone, though. Noah Clancy, the third-round rookie out of Oregon, played pretty solid, I would say, for a rookie campaign. 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. He kind of took over the starting spot in the second half of the season over Mo Alley Cox and Eric Ali. Those 3 kind of just rotated the tight end position, but it was kind of Noah Clancy who stood out the most. He's a guy who I think could be a solid second tight end for us. I'm not sure if he's necessarily a starter just yet. He's got great catching ability, but his route running needs work, his blocking needs work. And, if there is a bona fide tight end in free agency or in the draft, I can see us selecting him over Clancy. But I do like Noah Clancy a lot. Singletary then chipped in 3 touchdowns in the air. Eric Ali, a 6th-round pick from 2 years ago. He's been the backup tight end. He's shown flashes here and there. 18 catches, 211 yards, and 1 touchdown this season. He's kind of like a, knockoff version of Noah Clancy. They play a lot of the similar roles, and Clancy's obviously better. But I think for a 6th-round pick, Ali has kind of served his purpose. You can't ask for much. Mo Alley Cox was our tight end signing from 2 off seasons ago from Miami, and he's really not done a lot here. His role got phased out this season. 16 catches, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't see him being on the team next year. It's just not worked out here in Washington, and I'd rather give the snaps to Clancy and Ali anyway, as Call of Duty now is installed. Johnny Wilson is the second-year man out of Florida State, 6'7" body. I was hoping he'd take a step up this year in the offense, but he actually took a step backwards. Only had 14 catches, 144 yards, and a touchdown. He had a game 2 years ago against the Chicago Bears, I think it was, either the Bears or the Bucks, where he had 6 catches and 70-something yards and a touchdown. It really kind of had a standout showing. I was hoping he'd take this step this year, but he didn't. He stays behind Dotson on the depth chart, and Robinson kind of got these slot snaps over him, and he didn't really shine. So I'm a little worried because he does have star development, that he will lose that star development, and he is 6'7", so I want him to be a guy that can go out and, make the tough catches. He does a pretty decent job in traffic despite it being only 83. He's got good release. I mean, maybe we just need to throw it up to him more in those jump ball scenarios with 90 jumping as well. Doesn't have blazing speed, but I think we're just not fully tapping into his skill set, and I want to see it improve next year, especially if players like Dotson and Robinson aren't in the lineup next year. Then we see Kareem Hunt with a touchdown grab, and that's really it on that side. In the blocking departments, the offensive line definitely took a step back this year, in my opinion. We'll start with left tackle spot, Tyron Smith, who was our big signing last year. He was great when he was on the field, but he missed a ton of time. You can see he only played 14 games, way less snaps than everybody. Even the games that he played and he wasn't hurt long term, he left the game a lot. So that's a little concerning for me, is that injury department. And he is 34, so maybe he even retires at the end of the season. But nonetheless, when he's on the field, he is a great left tackle. You just got to keep him on the field more. At left guard, there was Andrew Norwell, who took a step back in my opinion, but it was still pretty solid. He is older though, and we do got to start replacing some of these linemen. We signed a lot of stopgap kind of veterans on this spot, but we got to start developing our own because, Smith's not going to be around much longer. Norwell's not going to be around much longer. Center was Ricky Stromberg, who, in my opinion, was a little underwhelming in this department, especially with star dev at 24 years old. He's in the top half of the league, but he kind of struggled getting pushed back against some of those dominant defensive tackles. And we play players like Dexter Lawrence and Jordan Davis. He kind of gets ragdolled a little bit, which is kind of unfortunate because I do like Stromberg a lot, and I like to see him continue to be in that middle. But we do have Bryce Foster, who we drafted 2 drafts ago, who's kind of developed a little bit. He's a 70 overall. He could start, in my opinion, if needed, but he's kind of our only depth guy. At right guard, we gave the chance to Braden Daniels this year to start, and it was not a good one in my opinion. He did not have a good year. He was getting beat a lot in pass coverage, wasn't the best run blocker as well. I think maybe he is a spot we can upgrade at next year. And then right tackle as well, we need to upgrade. Andrew Wiley did not do a good job. He's a free agent after the end of this year. So both of our right sides could be replaced, and which is what makes me hope even more that Smith and Norwell don't retire, because replacing more than 2 offensive linemen in an offseason could be a very, very tricky situation. On defense, they played a lot better in the second half of the year and have a lot of guys who are inflated in tackles, just how it becomes. Davis had 175 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. He was the anchor of the defense. He is part of that guy who captains the middle, which is why I want to get him re-signed. He's a very solid player. He's on my priority list. As you can see, he's a free agent after this year. That is not his contract for next year. That's his contract for this year. Need to get him re-signed because he is the anchor of our defense. Him and Jeremiah Trotter, a very good duo up the middle. Trotter didn't have an interception this year. He did miss some time with an injury, and it was very noticeable when he did. The middle of that linebacker spot gave way too many open running lanes. Him and Davis kind of fly back and forth and also help fill out those gaps in the run game. Then Cameron Curl had 119 tackles. He's kind of that unsung hero of the defense. He does a lot. He doesn't fill up the stat sheet in the flashy plays like interceptions and stuff, but he's a very, very good anchor there in the secondary. Helps with tight ends as well. And then Jatavius Martin also had over 100 tackles. He's starting to blossom as that free safety. Sacks, our leader was Montez Sweat. We didn't really have anybody this year who kind of just broke out with sacks and got double digits. Sweat had 4 in the last game, which gave him the lead. But other than that, we mostly filled in the run game. As you can see, tackles per loss, Jonathan Allen 60, which is absurd. I don't know why he gets so many, but he's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year again. Tranquill even had 19 and 6 sacks for him, so he was really good. I think he's signed on for 1 more year. He's going to regress a little bit, but depending on what happens, I'd like to see him play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. He did very good when blitzing, and he did a good job in run defense as well, all things considered with his 68 block shed. Maybe if we have some injuries again, he could play some more hand-in-the-dirt lineman, which is strange to say because he's very small, but I like the versatility that Drue Tranquill brought as well. Chase Young had 5.5 sacks, kind of a step back for him. I thought he stepped back into his role last year, then kind of faded again this year. Still inconsistent. And then Deron Payne, he's not going to fill up the stat sheet, but he eats up a lot of blocks in the middle. He's what allows Allen to get 60 tackles for a loss. So even though he only had 30 tackles, 6 TFLs, and 4 sacks, trust me, Payne did his job. Interception-wise, it was L'Jarius Sneed who led the way, the signing in the offseason from Kansas City. I thought he was a big bust, but he played a lot better in the second half of the season and led the way with 3 interceptions. Davis had 2, Kendall Fuller had 2. Both Sneed and Fuller signed 1-year contracts, so they will be the starters next year. Emmanuel Forbes, don't forget about him. He's played pretty good. He did okay in the nickel. It took him some getting used to, in my opinion, in that nickel spot, but, I think he played pretty solid. I just hope this development doesn't get hurt with Sneed and Fuller taking up spots, because he played really good those first 2 seasons, and I'm hoping it doesn't hurt now that he's sliding into the nickel. We'll go to the kicking side of things. Little was okay. He only had 86%. He did miss a good bit of kicks this year. Not as good as he was in his rookie campaign. Then Ryan Stonehouse was okay, but I think I might want a new punter. Kick return, Damon Cox did have a kick and a punt return, but he also had a couple of big fumbles in that regard, so maybe we can bring him some competition as well. But that does it for our stats. We'll quickly look at some of the league leaders to see who led the way in those categories. Starting off with passing yards, it was Bo Nix who actually led the way with 4,486 yards passing, and right behind him was Caleb Williams in that same draft class, only 2 yards behind. And then Bryce Young was third, so looks like the young quarterbacks are starting to become that next generation here in the NFL. You like to see that. Then you see a Dak Prescott there, followed by Justin Herbert, some of the key guys. Goff at his new home. Didn't play all that well out there in Green Bay, but he started to find his footing there late. And then Trey Lance in New Orleans played pretty okay. And then Brock Purdy and Burrow round out the 4,000-yard passers. Passing touchdowns leader was Brock Purdy with 38 touchdowns and only 1 interception. Hurts had 0 for the first 16 games, and then we picked him off twice, so that gave that crown to Brock Purdy, which is incredible. I think that's like a record for, starting quarterbacks for the whole season. Prescott had 35 touchdowns, followed by Burrow with 33. Mahomes also had 33. Nix had 32, and then a couple of other guys in the 30s. The interception leader was Bryce Young, who had 21, followed by Lance with 19. So we were not in that top category, which is, a little surprising. In the rushing category, your king is Josh Jacobs, 1,595 yards and 13 touchdowns. He also led the way in attempts, followed by Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, and Christian McCaffrey, Tony Pollard, just to name a few. Your rushing touchdown leader was Isaiah Pacheco, who had 20 rushing touchdowns for KC. Receiving, your leader in yards was Cooper Kupp with 1,500 receptions was Deontay Johnson, followed by him in second in yards, Justin Jefferson and George Pickens, so a couple of Steelers up there. Touchdowns was Brandon Ayuk with 22, and I thought for the longest time he would break the record for receiving touchdowns in a season. I mean, he was killing it through the early portion of the season. I mean, look at these early numbers. He had 1, 2, 2, 2, 4, 1, 4, 2. I mean, he was killing it. 1, and then he had 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 2. I mean, he had 3 for the last 8 games. He was on pace to shatter Rice's record, but fell off late. So that record still stands. On the blocking part, the worst offensive lineman was Charles Cross, followed by Abraham Lucas. God, sorry, Geno Smith. That's very unfortunate out there. We lead the league in tackles, which is usually not surprising. Cody Barton, the former Commander, is third. TFLs, I'm assuming, is Jonathan Allen. Yeah, not even close. Your sack leader was Myles Garrett with 18.5, followed by Aaron Donald in his new home in Minnesota. And your interception leader was Miles Jack with 6, as well as Marshawn Lattimore. Kicking, anybody perfect throughout the year? There was a few that were perfect. Justin Tucker, Carpenter, and Dicker, the kicker. Tucker only had 10 field goals. That's a little strange. We'll skip punting. Kick return, was anybody else who had a kick return touchdown? No, just Damon Cox, and he was the only one with a punt return as well. So we were the only two that had special teams touchdowns. Here's your record books, by the way. I just thought I'd show it as you can see in a season. Rushing touchdowns, we were close, but Tomlin's still there with 28. And then obviously Ayuk comes in 1 shy of Randy Moss. Sorry, I think I said Rice. I meant Randy Moss earlier, but he was so close. He just needed 2 more touchdowns in that 8-game stretch, and he just couldn't get it. But that does it for the league leaders. We'll take a look at the playoff bracket next. So next up we have the playoffs. As here's a look at it, been showing it through every episode. You can see in the AFC side of things, the Bengals got the 1 seed, the Colts the 2, the Bills the 3, the Chargers the 4, Steelers the 5, Patriots 6, and Chiefs 7. While in the NFC, it's the Vikings who get the 1 seed, followed by the Buccaneers, the Eagles, 49ers, Rams, Cowboys, and Giants. A couple of interesting matchups. The Colts and the Chiefs is probably, in my opinion, the most intriguing matchup in the wild card. Those teams just met up in Week 18, and the Chiefs were victorious, so they get an immediate rematch the next week. On the NFC, obviously, division rivals is fun. Eagles, Cowboys, and Niners, Rams. And the AFC things, you got Bills, Patriots as well. So a lot of division games in the first round. I'm not going to show a graphic like I did last time, but I do think my Super Bowl prediction, I think it's going to be the 49ers and the Chiefs. Yes, I have a Super Bowl rematch again in the championship. I think the Chiefs get there as the 7. But I do think the Niners win it this time. They are my Super Bowl favorites down there in the 4 spot. We'll see what happens, though. I'll simulate the postseason. All right, our Super Bowl is locked in, and it's an interesting one. It is the Cincinnati Bengals and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who will be meeting in the Super Bowl. The Bengals get in from the 1 spot. The Chiefs did beat the Colts like I thought they were going to, and the Bengals beat Kansas City and then beat Los Angeles to get to the Super Bowl. While on the NFC side of things, the Bucks beat the Giants in the first round. Then they beat the Niners in the divisional round before beating the 1 seed Vikings 28-7. So it'll be Bengals, it'll be Buccaneers in the Super Bowl. Both teams who have been recently. Tampa Bay looking to add another one to their shelf, while Cincinnati still trying to win their first Super Bowl. We'll have to watch that come Saturday, but that is what the Super Bowl will be looking like. We are also at the Pro Bowl week, so I will take a look at the Pro Bowl rosters real quick. We'll take a look, see who got it. And our side of things, we see Purdy, Allen at quarterback, Bo Nix, Richardson, Hurts, and Herbert. As you can see, running backs Barkley, Pacheco, Robinson, Jacobs, Pollard, Pierce. We don't get anybody yet. Usage and Janovich, those are kind of gimmies. For the fullbacks, Cooper Kupp and Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, George Pickens, Metcalf, Hill, Hodgins, Johnston, Hopkins, Smith-Schuster, and then Renfrow, Judy, so we don't get McLaurin in at wide receiver. Pitts and Kelsey, and then Kittle and Andrews. You can take a look at some of them screen. We'll go a little faster, but nobody on offense for us. We do not get a single Pro Bowler on offense. While on defense, we get Jonathan Allen, so that makes sense. He is in as a Pro Bowler. And it looks like, no, Yamin Davis gets in as a Pro Bowler, his first, so that's exciting for him. I think those are our only 2 Pro Bowlers. Yeah, Cameron Little gets it, despite him only kicking 86%. Not sure if that's necessarily the best, but he gets in. And yeah, that's it. So we get 3 guys invited to the Pro Bowl this year. And we'll also take a look lastly at the awards, and it showed those. So we'll see who won the yearly awards. Our MVP is Brock Purdy. He gets it with his only 1 interception on the season. And then your coach of the year is Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals. Makes sense considering they are in the Super Bowl. In the AFC side of things, player of the year was Pacheco. He gets it with his 20 rushing touchdowns. Max Crosby is your defensive. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Nick Singleton of the Chargers. Alar got second. Defensive Rookie of the Year in Tennessee is Davison Igbinosun, who had 5 interceptions as well. So good for him. Quarterback Jonathan Allen, halfback Pacheco, wide receiver Deontay Johnson, lineman was Quentin Nelson, D lineman was Garrett, and then a linebacker was Crosby, and then he also got the best defensive back. So the good rookie out there in Tennessee, good for him. Kicker Justin Tucker. In the NFC, offensive player was Brandon Ayuk. That makes sense. Jonathan Allen gets it for defensive player of the year. It's his 2nd in a row. Offensive rookie of the year was Donovan Edwards of the Vikings, as Noah Clancy got 6th place. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Bear Alexander, the number 2 overall pick in Tampa Bay. Best quarterback was Brock Purdy. Running back was Bijan Robinson. Wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. McLaurin got 10th. Martin was best lineman. Allen got best D lineman. Dallas Turner got best linebacker for Seattle. Davis got 3rd, and Tranquill got 5th. And the best defensive back was Marshawn Lattimore. And then Jack Carpenter was kicker. See, Little was 6th, so I don't know why he got invited to the Pro Bowl, but I mean, we'll take it. So that'll do it for the live comm part of the episode. The last thing I'm going to show you is the coach hiring. So let's jump right into the only one that we did before I show you theirs real quick is we did hire a new defensive coordinator as we're franchise staff. We hired this guy who has the Buffalo Bills playbook, and the reason because he's supposed to be in real life Leslie Frazier. I feel like that's a defensive coordinator that would make sense. He recently spent time with the Bills back in 2022, but he has some familiarity with Eric Bieniemy. They were both with the Vikings from 2008 to 2010. So I think it would make sense that Bieniemy would call on Leslie Frazier to be his new defensive coordinator. He's still the offensive coordinator, which is why we didn't fire him. So we're still going to be using Washington's playbook. Bieniemy still calls the plays. So yeah, he gets a third year at the helm. So this is kind of a make or break it year for Bieniemy. There were a lot of good hirings we could have made, in my opinion. Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, just to name a few. But we're going to roll with Bieniemy for one more year. I'm going to give him another year with Penix and help his development. But let's take a look real quickly at who the other teams signed as their head coaches. Actually, I forgot the staff week is until after the Super Bowl. So we'll be looking at the staff hirings in 2 episodes, because next episode we will have the Super Bowl where we'll figure out who is the champion of the league. And then the next episode we will preview the offseason and get into free agency. But thank you guys so much for watching this one. Hope you guys enjoyed and you're ready for another year and another offseason. If you are, make sure you drop that like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. This is Mr. Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.